Hello everybody, my name is Ord and welcome back to Ord Narrations. Today we're going to be reading a story about a guy whose girlfriend wants to be in an open relationship, but is also opposed to him watching porn. Just take a second to wrap your head around that one. My girlfriend, 32 female, and I, 33 male, have dated for about a year, and things have been going really well. Recently, though, she surprised me by mentioning she would like me to not watch any porn from this point forwards in our relationship. I was a bit surprised, because we've frankly never spoken about the subject before, and it's not really a part of my life anyway, so I asked her if she would mind sharing her thoughts about it and why it was important to her. She said she usually waits until around this point in her relationship to tell her partner this, and that it's just something that is a boundary for her, but didn't elaborate further. I felt the way she phrased it seemed less like a request and more like an ultimatum, but I told her I would think about it, and she said okay. About a week later, she mentioned indirectly that down the line, she would want to be non-monogamous. Again, pretty surprising, and not something that she'd ever expressed during our discussions about the future. But of course, we're all entitled to change our minds at any point, so I told her that wasn't really something I was interested in, but respected her wishes and would think about that too. Although I appreciate her honesty now on both issues, I feel totally blindsided and confused about why this is coming up a year into our relationship. My gut instinct is activated that something is wrong, that our partnership is not safe, and that these issues aren't really areas for compromise, but rather an order, my way or the highway. But maybe I'm misinterpreting it. I do feel on edge, so I know I'm not thinking totally rationally. How would you deal with this while staying true to yourself and welcoming debate and compromise? TLDR, girlfriend asked me not to watch porn anymore, and then told me she wants to be non-monogamous down the line. How do I respond? It's a bit of a confusing statement, to be honest. The no porn thing, right, fine, fair enough. But to juxtapose that with in a relationship is kind of baffling. No, you're not allowed to watch people getting it on, but let's get it on with other people. The mind boggles. Truly. I do think the biggest red flag here is the way she said she usually waits until around this point in her relationship to tell her partner this. Like, she's clearly done this before, and it's clearly not worked at some point. But waiting a year in to say something that's quote unquote a boundary doesn't add up. There's a lot of weird stuff going on here. You'd think, let's say it was hypothetically a boundary, you'd think it would have come up earlier in the relationship, like when you were getting serious, say. That would be when that would come up. You know, it would be perfectly reasonable within the first, I don't know, month or further, I don't know. But to just be like, I'm not that comfortable with you watching porn, would you be okay stopping that for me? You know, that would be a completely fair request. But a week later to be like, yo, I want to sleep with some other people is kind of wild. So let's read a few of the comments and see what the community think on this. Someone's written, the only reason you would wait to disclose these things deliberately after a year is to make sure your partner is already so invested in the relationship that they are more likely to go along with it. This is textbook manipulation. I understand struggling to bring it up, but if what you said is true, then that is not what this is. Someone replied to this saying, this is the answer. Both of these are things that should have been disclosed way sooner, especially wanting to be open. She waited until a relationship was built with the expectation of exclusivity until there was enough relationship between you to leverage some pretty unilateral demands. She should have dropped this earlier, and she should have been able to speak to both asks about more detail, explaining her reasonings why, instead of just making the asks without any transparency. Yeah, completely agree. Someone else has written, your girlfriend is not honest. She's waited for the sunk cost fallacy to kick in. She knew if she was honest and upfront that you were far less likely to stick around, so she's waited until you were invested and it's harder to leave over it. It's not a boundary if you wait for a year to bring it up. She's only using that word because it shuts down your discussion. You should listen to your gut here, OP. Someone replies with, it's kind of sad because OP writes like someone who's pretty genuine and pretty comfortable in their own skin. I'm sorry, dude. I agree with everyone saying it's calculated and dishonest not bringing this up for a year. Yeah, 100%. That's the biggest red flag, is like, The admission that it's a year in, and that's when she normally, quote unquote, does it. Kind of wild. Someone else has commented, I think it's a bit of a red flag that she says things like, I usually wait until around this point to tell my partner this. If you want non-monogamy or no porn in your relationship, just be upfront about it. Don't spring it up when someone else is emotionally invested in you and you haven't given any real hints to it. Your mileage may vary with it all, but it's the kind of thing that would reduce my impression of someone's overall honesty. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I mean, if this, let's say this was on the cards, there's two options, right? It's either something she's changed her mind about suddenly, the open side say. Either she was always wanting this the whole time and keeping it secret, in which case she's dishonest, and then will probably be other and worse things that will come up in the future. Or she's changed her mind suddenly, and then the question is, well, what's done that? Someone's replied to that comment saying, I wouldn't even call it a red flag. That's just being a manipulative person. You're manipulating someone into wasting their time with you so they can gain emotional connection based off a lie of monogamy, before dropping your true intentions. Someone else replied to that, saying, so yeah, ask about your part. Are you allowed to see multiple people too? But before that, do you value monogamy? If you do and she doesn't, you really shouldn't waste your time on her. Tell her those requirements in her relationship are something she needs to be upfront with her next partner, like within a month of dating. Also tell her how confusing her desires are after a year of monogamy. 100%. Someone else has left a comment. So she allows her partners to invest their time, energy, and efforts into a relationship before she discloses details about her boundaries or what she wants in the future, which she knows all along. Even teenagers who start with a first relationship communicate these boundaries during the talking stage. If a red flag was a person, it would be your girlfriend. Brutal. It's only been a year. You don't have to waste more time. Imagine getting to know the new boundaries every year. Year 1, no porn. Year 2, non-monogamy. Year 3, question. That would be the next thing. Would be, okay, so these two things have been established, which restrict me and do the opposite of restricting you. Now what? What are your other demands? You know, if you go along with this, you're kind of agreeing to the possibility there might be more. Someone else has left the comment saying, sounds manipulative. For one, she brings all this up when you're already emotionally invested. It's the non-monogamy thing combined with the no porn that's a huge red flag. It's really strange to be open to banging other people while being in a committed quote-unquote relationship and be all sexually liberated, but draw the line at porn. It's a trope at this point that it's much more difficult for men to find sexual partners in open relationships than it is for women. There are countless examples. Assuming she's good looking, she'll be drowning in D. And unless you're the type of guy who's so charismatic and attractive that women you don't know frequently approach you, you're gonna have a bad time. Quite often, physical intimacy between the primary partners, you and her, drops significantly in these arrangements. And if she's adamant that you don't view porn, it sounds like she's trying to control you and your sexuality. Personally, it sounds like she has a secret hot wife / cucking fetish, and she's trying to get you acclimated to it. Could be. That paragraph in the middle about kind of the differences in open relationships is, from what I've seen online, very true. And from what I've seen from people I know, very true. Someone else left a comment saying, it looks like your girlfriend started out by being the sort of person you'd want to get involved with, and is now starting to reveal who she really is. If I understand correctly, she's the sort of person that's not secure enough to allow you to watch porn, but secure enough to consider you sleeping with other people? No, this doesn't add up. There are lots more shoes to drop still. Don't make long-term plans with her. Giant red flags. Someone replied to that saying, bet you the non-monogamy is going to be one-sided, lol. And someone replied to that saying, I'm sure that's going to be her expectation. If she's worried about porn, there's no chance she's going to be okay with OP actually sleeping with other people. 100%. 100%. Likely it'll happen once and she'll absolutely flip out and convince you that you're in the wrong for doing that to her and make you basically feel guilty to never do it again, while on her side there's side pieces galore. The next comment reads, these kinds of boundaries in a relationship are usually set up and talked about early on. You should know that your partner wants an open relationship if that's what they intended down the line. Boundaries in a relationship must have mutual consent. You are right in that priorities and consent can be revoked at any time. The thing with that is changing your boundaries mid-relationship does not entitle you to have your partner agree. Just as she wishes for things, you can say no. The fact that she has waited for this is a red flag. It means she's hoping that getting you invested to a certain point with a certain time in the relationship will allow her to more easily test and push your boundaries and get you to commit to something you wouldn't otherwise agree to. She knows what she's doing, and it is not okay. Let me ask you, what do you want? Are you really okay with an open relationship? Are you trying to go with the flow or feel selfish saying no? This isn't the case of her not getting to be herself. If it was under false pretenses, and you aren't selfish for saying no, you don't want your girlfriend of a year to fuck other guys. If she's already trying to open things, I would talk again and address your needs and concerns. The fact she's trying this, I would also see who she has in mind, or if she was talking to anyone. Deciding randomly one day to open things without your partner agreeing doesn't excuse cheating or attempts to look to cheat. I think I would agree with that last bit. The questions at the start, the what do you want? Would you be okay with an open relationship? Do you feel selfish saying no? And so on. Are the questions that OP really needs to consider in this context. They're the big questions. Someone made a comment saying, I feel like if you enter a monogamous relationship and then open it, it only ever ends in tragedy. I've never heard of this shift working out. Someone replied to that saying, yeah, because you're basically changing one of the pillars of the relationship. I've only seen non-monogamous relationships work when they were set up as non-monogamous from the very start, not as a pivot from an initially monogamous one. Completely agree. Open relationships are basically a relationship where you remove or de-restrict one of the axioms of a relationship and then ask, can it continue? Be that exclusivity, be that one of the other boundaries that people set up. And transitioning from having those axioms to not having those axioms is often really difficult. If you enter into one or are experienced in open relationships, often you'll have agreed the boundaries basically beforehand. And only then, if the boundaries are then broken, that would count as cheating and so on. Whereas if you're in a monogamous relationship, you get used to a certain way of behaving, and then all of a sudden your partner does something left of field that technically is what you've agreed to in the open relationship, but isn't what you're used to, and it can hurt a lot. Someone else has commented saying, my theory, 1, she's already cheating, and those acts have been recorded and put online. No porn for you because you might see it. And number 2, by convincing you to open their relationship, this will somehow, in her mind, lessen her betrayal. Potentially. I would probably more favor some of the explanations earlier in the video. This one, as much as it does make sense, I think the simplest explanation is just that she's been kind of agreeing to this monogamous relationship under false pretenses and is trying to get you invested enough where you kind of just go along with it because it's easier than backing out and starting again. Tricky situation. So, what do you think OP should do? What would you do in OP's shoes? Let me know in the comments. We should probably leave it there. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.